Okay. I'll go ahead and bring this meeting to order of the City of Sebastopol Planning Commission meeting of February 23rd, 2021. If you could do a roll call, please.
Gary, you're muted.
Sorry, thank you. Commissioner Howard?
Aye.
Commissioner Lindenbush?
Here.
Commissioner Kelly?
Here.
Commissioner Ottinger?
Here.
Commissioner Dauch?
Here.
Vice Chair Fritz?
Here.
And Chair Fernandez?
Here.
So we do have a full complement this evening.
Okay. There are no meetings or no minutes to approve for this meeting. Now open to item number 4, comments from the public on items that are not on tonight's agenda. So if anyone from the public would like to make any comments, you have 3 minutes to do so. Just simply either raise your hand physically or virtually on the Zoom.
Thank you. And we have not received any comments electronically for this meeting. I do see Huck. I am asking you to unmute, and can you see the timer?
Yes, I just wanted to
go ahead and begin.
I just wanted to say thank you to commissioners for all their work on the car wash review. That's all. Yeah, you asked the hard questions and did the tough work, and I appreciate all that. That's all I have. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'm not seeing any other public comment. Chair Fernandez.
Okay. Great. All right. So I'll move to item number 5. If any of the commissioners have any conflicts of interest, please come forward with that. Okay. Don't seem like we do. Okay. So I'm going to move on to item number 6 from our regular agenda. This is the Petaluma Sebastopol Trail presentation, presentation from Regional Parks on the Petaluma Sebastopol Trail. And the commission will be asked to recommend the City Council adopt a resolution of support for this project. And I believe that Ken Tam is here representing Sonoma County Regional Parks. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chair Fernandez, and I will introduce Steve Earhart is also here from Regional Parks. He is the planning manager, and you know, he knows a lot more about the history between the City of Sebastopol and Sonoma County Regional Parks. But what I do know from my meetings with him, which we have on a quarterly basis to talk about park planning items that are sort of conjunction between regional parks and the city, is that there has been a history of great collaboration between the City of Sebastopol and Sonoma County Regional Parks. And some of you may not know, but their Measure M, the sales tax measure, which we talk about frequently at this group when we're talking about park budgeting, was Regional Parks has put together a technical advisory group for that, which after COVID began morphed into a parks, much more of a parks collaboration meeting on a weekly basis. So, and they've been hugely instrumental, not only from the physical stuff, which Steve and Ken are going to talk about tonight, but also from the COVID operations, what's allowed, what's not allowed, how are people doing, all of the various logistics that are sort of brand new as of about a year ago. You know, how do you sanitize? How do you control the group activities? All those types of things. But for this particular project, the City of Sebastopol did have a part of it. And actually, we put some money in the game. And actually, from my understanding of it, at least we shamed Petaluma into putting up some money as well to support the planning effort. And I will, with that, I'll hand it off to Steve and Ken to go through this process, but just to know that, you know, part of the reason Sebastopol has a lot of really great trails like West County Trail and the Joe Rodota Trail is because of the collaboration between the city and regional parks. And so we would like to, I would like to continue in my predecessor's footsteps and continue that collaboration. And the Planning Commission, which is of course the city's parks commission as well, is a key part of that. And so we wanted to bring them here for you tonight.
Thank you, Carrie. That is a wonderful introduction. Touched on many of the points. You know, it was hard for us to picture how Kenyon would be followed up, but we now got it. We understand, and we're just delighted you're here. My name is Steve Ehret. I'm the planning manager for Regional Parks. Ken Tam is also online and will be providing a brief presentation momentarily. I'm just going to say a few words. First, thank you to the city of Sebastopol. You nailed it. We wouldn't be here unless it was both the city, the entity, the agency, as well as the citizens. This project is citizen initiated, and it took a couple times for us to apply for the Caltrans planning before we were successful. And Sebastopol stepped up both times and even up their ante. And as you alluded to, perhaps Shane Petaluma into supporting it a bit more. But because of the importance of the project, even the Sonoma County Bike Coalition and the Santa Rosa really helped push us over the edge to secure the couple $100,000 to pay for the study. The regional parks and the city have a long history of collaboration on the Rodota Trail, on the West County Trail, and on Regal Ranch Regional Park. We have invested about 20 million or so in the trail projects, Rodota Trail and the West County Trail. And the city has also kicked in real money into some of the segments within city limits, and we're very appreciative. And that's allowed us to connect Sebastopol to Graydon and to Forestville, as well as to Santa Rosa. Just going to touch on something very briefly. We are working on making the trip better. We just finished the gap at Forestville, so that's now open. We'll be sending out a press release soon about that. And we're hard at work trying to close the nearly mile gap along Occidental Road, where you're right next to the bars. We don't like that. And then not this summer, following summer, we're fully funded. We'll be replacing the 2 remaining railroad bridges on the Rodota Trail just outside city limits. And that's a, I don't know, $1 million-something project that's long overdue. So we continue to reinvest in what we've already made and to try to make it better. The Petaluma Sebastopol Trail, the idea came from the railroad. The Petaluma Sebastopol Railroad kind of runs out in the west of 116 through Hessel and Cunningham and kind of loops around before coming back into the 116 corridor. And there was a few bits and pieces of old right-of-way that the railroad quitclaimed to the county. And it gave the appearance that something might be possible. As we delved into our study, we learned it wasn't possible. It's people's backyards, and many of the pieces of right-of-way we thought we had are actually just the ability to run a railroad, not actually anything else. And in many cases, they already reverted back to the previous landowner. So we are not able to use the vast majority of the railroad right-of-way, sadly. However, we do believe we can deliver a separated trail, a multi-use trail for bikes, pedestrians, and equestrians from Sebastopol to Petaluma. And it's not the ideal route off in the Laguna or in the countryside. It is next to some busy roads, but it will be a backbone route that supports climate change transportation and allows both recreational and transportation commuting, basically. So it's a very important project. And we're excited to go over some of the details, and we'll be open to questions and answers. You may ask yourself, why are we here doing this now when we wrapped up this study in 2018? We've been to the Sebastopol City Council. We've hosted a number of meetings packed full of the Vets building in Sebastopol, and we're in Petaluma and Hessel Grange and so on. But the reason is we're now at the place where we're really ready to begin working on it, and we'll need to apply for other grant funds. And we really want to make sure we have the full-fledged city support on the project so we can be most successful with our fundraising. So we neglected to secure the resolution that Carrie mentioned, the endorsement, even though we have presented much of this information before. And we have learned a little bit of new tidbits here and there, but in general, it confirms what we already understand and what the feasibility study articulated. So with that, I'd like to introduce Ken Tam, park planner. Ken has been involved with virtually every section, well, definitely every section of the West County Trail and almost every section of the Joe Rodota Trail, and is nearly 30 years with regional parks. And Ken does not have a video, but he will be sharing his screen and be on audio. Ken, are you ready?
Yes. Good evening, commissioners. This is Ken Tam. Happy to be here this evening to present the project to you. Is everyone able to see my screen? I'm sharing my screen now. Okay, good. I'll go ahead and start. Let me go ahead and start the slideshow here. All right. So as Steve mentioned, the Petaluma Sebastopol Trail feasibility study was a project was funded through with Caltrans and also multiple partners, including funding from the City of Sebastopol, City of Petaluma, the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition, Santa Rosa Cycling Club, and as well as regional parks. This was a project where we hired consultants to help us to look at the overall scope of the project, because this study area is very quite large. It actually goes from Petaluma through heading north to the unincorporated, including the city of Sebastopol. It's a quite large area. So some of the options we're looking at to develop a kind of a multi-use trail to connect Petaluma Sebastopol Trail, and the multi-use trail would provide access not only to bicyclists but as well as pedestrians, and as well as equestrians who would like to use it. This particular project, the Petaluma Sebastopol Trail, is identified in our existing 2010 Sonoma County Bicycle Pedestrian Plan, as well as another transportation and land use plans as well. As I mentioned, it was funded. A big portion of the funds came from Caltrans transportation grant, with matching funds from thank you very much, to our partners, City of Petaluma, City of Sebastopol, as well as our other interest groups, including the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition and the Santa Rosa Cycling Club, for contributing funds. Without those funds, we would not be able to. The Caltrans grants required a matching grant, requires matching funds from other folks, and without the partnership, we would not be able to secure the funds. As Steve mentioned, we've tried several times for this grant, and we finally got the funds to do the study. All right, so now to the map. So the map you're looking at is kind of general study area. You could tell it's a quite large area. The challenge is to kind of look at within that study area to see where some opportunities and where some of the constraints are, and seeing how much public land are available to provide a fully separated trail pathway. Some of the limits of the study include connecting to the existing Joe Rodota Trail. I'll go ahead and move my cursor to the top. So what you see here, that blue line, that is the existing Joe Rodota Trail, which is really, really popular, as we all know, to connect to. And from here at the City of Sebastopol, we would actually connect going down all this area is the unincorporated area of Sonoma County. Then eventually it would end at it's kind of like the city limits of Petaluma. Some of the other areas we looked at as part of the study, we included looking at opportunities, some of the existing easements that are owned by the Sonoma County Water to Pipeline in the area, as well as looked at some of the existing public land in the Laguna de Santa Rosa area as well. And as part of the study, we also want to make sure that this particular project actually provides connectivity to existing plan documents within the City of Sebastopol's bicycle and pedestrian plan, as well as the City of Petaluma bicycle and pedestrian plan as well. Some of the goals of the feasibility study is to provide a safe, active transportation modes for multiple modes. As I mentioned earlier, modes include bicyclists, pedestrians, as well as equestrians. This to my right is the graphic. This is just an example. We collected some data just to look at the corridor along the area, and we selected Highway 116 as well as Stony Point Road to look at the existing data for traffic incidents. Now, this is incidents between pedestrians and vehicles, as well as bicyclists and motors. So this was just a snapshot. We collected the data. This is available through CHP, and we collected the data looking from the year between 2005 to 2015. So it shows this bicycle symbol. This is just an example of where we actually had some collisions, where a bicyclist had a collision with a vehicle. And here's an example of where we actually had a collision with a pedestrian. Now, these next to these different symbols, they're color coded. For instance, they identify the severity of the incident, where it was actually the injury included a complaint of pain, or the injury included very severe incident. So you could tell there's definitely a cluster of accidents towards the south of Sebastopol within the city limits, as well as outside of Sebastopol city limit. So again, this is just an example of some of the data that we collected to help us do the feasibility study. The other piece of the feasibility was looked at ways we could connect to existing and planned routes or trails that are in this corridor. I mean, this is area, there are existing planned trails for the Laguna Trail extension on the east side of 116. There's also a network of trails planned for the city of Roanoke Park and Canadi that can also provide connectivity to the Petaluma Sebastopol Trail, as well as there's other planned routes within the city of Petaluma. So we want to make sure that our feasibility study incorporates and consider all this connectivity, this network of trails. The trail designs, we want to make sure that it provides recreation, but also it's inclusive. It's inclusive for physical activity for all ages. You know, make sure we have this trail that's comfortable for all age groups, where we have seniors, children, be able to make it safe and make sure they feel comfortable using the trail use. We also wanted to look at improving the economic vitality. What I mean by that is, you know, if there's opportunities, trails could connect to local businesses, restaurants, to give the general public the ability to use this trail to go from their homes, hop on the trail, and use the trail to get to a destination area, a place to eat, a place to shop as well. Also, we mentioned earlier about the trail design safety. We definitely want to make sure that this is a separated route, a trail that's actually separate from the road, and provide as much buffer space between the trail and the existing vehicle routes as well. And finally, the goal was to make sure, which I kind of mentioned earlier, is to incorporate our project into the existing city and county bike plans. Very, very important for us as part of the feasibility study. We needed to do a lot of outreach. This included, we actually had 9 meetings and workshops that included hosting a workshop in City of Sebastopol. We also have one in City of Petaluma, and we also have one in the Hessel area, which is the unincorporated area of Sonoma County. My hats off to the resident city of Sebastopol. I mean, by far, we had the most attendees at the Sebastopol Veterans Hall. This is where we had one workshop. We had close to about, I would say, about 80 participants. Keep in mind that that workshop was open to anyone. You didn't have to live in Sebastopol. You could live in anywhere to come, but most of the attendees were from the city of Sebastopol. The outreach included mailers and also contacting landowners as well as stakeholders. Stakeholders included representatives from the City of Petaluma, City of Sebastopol, Caltrans, other county departments like County Public Works Road Department as well. There were opportunities to provide comments. If folks were not able to come to one of the meetings or workshops that we hosted, folks were able to go online to provide comments on our website. You can actually submit comments, by hand. You can actually mail by letter. We receive comments by that. But most of our comments that we receive were actually through our website. We actually hosted a Survey Monkey where actually people go online. It was available in English and Spanish. People could actually provide comments electronically, and that was most of the quickest way to to be able to capture any comments. We actually received a total of 432 responses from the general public about the feasibility study. So on my right here, this actually is the top photo. Actually, right here, that's Kenyon Webster. This is the meeting that we hosted out in the City of Sebastopol at the South Sebastopol Veterans Memorial Building. And down here is a photo of a graphic. We plotted a large map, and we had an exercise where residents could go up to the map and provide comments. They could provide sticky notes on the drawing, or you could actually make comments directly on the map. That's another way for us to make sure we capture everyone's comments. So the preferred alignment concept, after looking at the existing public right-of-way, what we had available, we pretty much focused on looking at along Highway 116 and Stony Point Road. In this corridor, it's controlled by Caltrans, and so many portions of Stony Point Road is controlled by County Public Works Road Department. And we're looking at along this corridor where we could actually provide a kind of a rapid or commuter type route that cyclists could use to be able to get from Petaluma to Sebastopol and vice versa. But we also looked at the ability to provide more of a kind of spur trails that are off the main preferred alignment to provide opportunities to use more of a recreational, more of a relaxed route along that corridor. And I'll show you more on the next map, some of the alignments we looked at. Okay, so this map to the right, everything that's shown in the blue line, that is what we're identifying as a preferred alignment, pretty much all the way down to Petaluma here. We also identified 4 connecting trails. Now, these trails are not the preferred alignment, but these are actually alignments that do connect to the preferred alignment, but gives opportunities for trail users to go off to use other segments that are planned or existing routes. So, for instance, here on the top, this dashed yellow line, this is a county proposed trail, the Cogan Creek Trail, and this will actually eventually provide some connectivity to the Petaluma Sebastopol Trail. And there's also the part of the Laguna Trail also shown in trail. So you can see how all this the network of trails kind of feed in and actually provide connectivity to the Petaluma Sebastopol Trail. Now, what we're showing is just kind of a few of the trails in the area, but there are other trail alignments just further outside that we didn't show on this particular map. So I'll kind of go over some of the trail types for this project. The 2 types that we've identified is either a Class 1 or a Class 4, a cycle track, and I'll go over that in a little more detail. But I also want, just for comparison, I'll show you some of the other trail types that are available that's not the preferred alignment. So the first one is what we call the Class 1 bike path. This is a kind of a Caltrans definition. This is a fully separated bike path that most of you are actually familiar with. The example is the Jorro West County Trail is actually a path fully separated from the road. A good example is the trail alignment that goes right by Andy's Market. There's actually a separated buffer between the trail users from the shoulder and from the vehicles. And so this is an example here. We actually have the cross section, a minimum width of 8 feet wide. And the reason we have minimum width 8 feet wide, it allows both the bicyclists and pedestrians to now enough room to travel in each direction. So that gives them enough space for traveling. So right here, what you're looking at is another view. This is a kind of, this one at the top, the profile is kind of a cross section. And this down here is a plan view. For instance, if you're looking from the top, like you're looking from an aerial view, it gives you an example what the class 1 trail would look like. All right, the next example is consider a bike lane, which is consider a class 2. A trail user, and actually you're sharing the road right away with vehicles. There is no physical barrier. There is no buffer space between you and the vehicle. The only delineating the lane is actually striping, as you can see from this graphic. Down here, this is a plan view, an aerial view from the top. You actually just have a white line striping. You'll have an arrow and a stenciling to identify this is the location where a bicyclist and pedestrian to actually use. And again, you can see there is no separation. The minimum recommended width for the class 2 is between 4 and 5 feet width is what you're looking at. The next one is the class 3 bike route, which is we're not considering this for the Petaluma Sebastopol Trail, but just to illustrate here is where you're really sharing your right of way with vehicles. The other striping they have is actually a stencil for the they call it share road, and pretty much you're sharing your space with the vehicle as you're using this area. There is no separated line like a bike lane because class 2. Again, there's no buffer space. This is just a share road, so you're just sharing your right of way with the vehicle. And this is an example of what's called Class 4 cycle track. This is still somewhat fairly new for California. I would say Caltrans adopted standard not too long ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So this type of design is actually where the Class 4 cycle track is actually dedicated striping right away. It's exclusive use for bicyclists. So in this situation, we would actually have a dedicated lane for bicyclists with a physical barrier separated from the vehicle traffic. In conjunction, we actually have a separated pedestrian pathway. For instance, here's an example where you have the cyclist here, and you have a separated pedestrian path. This location would occur in a location where we have more than enough public right-of-way. We're going to actually have a separated pathway for bicyclists and a separated pathway for pedestrians. So some of the next steps, that Steve and I will be working on. So beginning in fall of 2021, we're going to start doing some preliminary engineering. That involves getting some consultants on board and doing more of a detailed engineering, valuing of the alignment, and allowing us to give us the opportunity to look at how much space we have to fit in the trail, and also to look at drainage. So the Petaluma Sebastopol Trail feasibility study is a little more kind of high-level concept document. So here, the preliminary engineering, we're getting more detail in the weeds, so to speak, to look at more of the detailed design. We'll be working with Caltrans and county right-of-way coordination. As I mentioned, 116 is controlled by Caltrans. Stony Point Road, county right-of-way. We'll coordinate with them to look at their existing right-of-way and look at the existing width. We also need to secure additional funding. We don't have all the funding for design or the construction for the project. The next piece is also we need to secure regulatory permits. If we're going to need to do filling of an existing ditch to provide the pathway, we're going to need to get regulatory permits from the Army Corps of Engineers, as well as possibly getting permits from the Regional Water Quality, and that could actually take some time. We need to make sure we get all of our regulatory permits approved before we move to construction. And lastly, a lot of stuff I mentioned this evening, you can actually go to our project website. Once you get to the parks.sonomacounty.ca.gov, the Petaluma Sebastopol Trail Feasibility Study, the complete document. What I gave you is a very, very abbreviated version of the study. But if you have some time, you want to read the document, the full final feasibility study is available online. And also you can actually register to get updates on this project as we progress forward. So thank you, commissioners, for taking the time listening to our presentation. we'll go ahead and open up to any questions that Steve and I can help answer.
Can you take us off the share screen, please?
Sure. Yep.
And then you can go back to it. People have specific questions.
Sure. Sorry, my apology. I'm trying to find the.
There we go.
There we go.
Ken, I think
Thanks,
I just
Gary.
did it for you. Yeah, no problem.
Great. Yeah, thank you both to you, Ken, Steve, for taking the time in the presentation. Questions from commissioners before I open it up to public comment. Anyone have a question, either physically raise your hand or virtually, and Carrie will recognize you. Hey, Luke.
Commissioner Lindenbush?
Thank you so much, Steve and Ken, for the presentation. Hugely supportive of this. My question has to do with some of the connection of this trail to Rohnert Park Kotati. I looked through the longer document, and I know it was outside of the area of scope for the project, but I was just sort of curious how this trail might connect to the bike networks in that city, those two cities.
Ken, are you able to pull up the most useful map you have?
Let me see.
If it's too much trouble, we'll just narrate it. We can follow.
Yeah,
up with the commissioner.
I'll have to go look for that file. I don't have it ready. I know we have the Bellevue Creek Trail. I'll let you go and bring that up. See, that actually connects to Stony Point Road.
So there's several different trails coming in on the western side of Rohnert Park that connect over to this trail. So Ken just mentioned the Bellevue Trail is one of them. Heinbau is another. There's a planned Laguna Bikeway. What's the fourth one I'm forgetting, Ken?
I'm drawing a blank right now.
Yeah,
I'll mention it if I
there's
can.
there's one more, but there's kind of a
Colgan gets pretty close. Colgan Creek Trail, it gets pretty close. But that's more in the
Roseland. Yeah, it'd probably be best for us to send a map. We are active on the areas in the unincorporated county, and we have been coordinating with the city of Rohnert Park on some of those connections. So we're optimistic that we'll be able to tie that together. And once you get into Rohnert Park, because of the SMART trail, you're then able to slide north or south and connect to many more. Is there a more specific question about one of those we could field, or?
No, I think that absolutely answers my question. I was just thinking about, the importance of connecting to Rohnert Park and Kotati as it's kind of in between Sebastopol and Petaluma, and also, as you mentioned, the connection to the forthcoming SMART trail as well. So thank you.
Yes. Okay. I have a question. The Colgan Creek Trail, how far away is that from completion, or is that still just kind of a something that they're thinking about, or is that moving along?
So we have built one major phase of it on the edge of Santa Rosa, and we have a western extension of it in the plan. We've done some preliminary analysis of it, but we haven't taken steps to build another section. And then we've also worked with Santa Rosa on their connecting pieces inside the city. They're working on connecting those. It goes clear on over to Taylor Mountain Regional Park on the east side of 101. And we haven't figured out a way to have it be a separated trail to get over 101, but the areas kind of bookending it can be. And that's feathering right into, if you're familiar with their proposed Kiwanis Springs Community Park, which is adjacent to our county park. So we're working on both sides, but we're not at the moment advancing further the western part of Colgan, but we intend to.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioner questions? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up for public comment, and any members of the public that would like to comment on this item, please raise your hand. And I see Mr. Diedler. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question before I make my comment, but I know the area pretty well, yet I had a hard time following the maps that were presented. So can you just answer this one question? Does the trail follow 116 all the way to Stony Point Road? And where does it diverge from following 116?
Yeah, and if we can maybe answer that question after your comments, and then come back to that.
Go ahead and comment now.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think I'm among many in the public that aren't very enthusiastic about this trail. That we had originally started out to make a trail going down the railroad that connected Sebastopol and Petaluma, and it would have made one of the most beautiful trails in the county. And instead, we have moved over to going down 116 and Stony Point Road and not using any of the rural areas at all. And we're going to have one of the most undesirable trails in the county. And I was in attendance of nearly all the meetings that went into this, and there was a very organized group that wanted this trail going down the railroad put down. It was organized by one person who did a great professional job of rounding up people and convincing them that awful things would happen if the trail went near them. And they had a professional website that showed, they said it looked like the Joe River Trail in the worst part. And it said that there'd be crime, graffiti, human waste, homeless people camping in their backyard, and on and on. And they talked to most of the owners and people in the neighborhood at least twice in some situations. And so that the negative response that was seen in these public meetings was well orchestrated and just totally overran the enthusiasm from the people that wanted to see this trail go down the railroad. And, you know, my experience in talking to people along the trail was that many of those homeowners originally, and this is before this campaign, originally were very welcoming of the trail idea. And I hope that the county takes the long view and says, you know, what do we really want? And it might take a generation, but the difference is so stark. And it would be so much more desirable to recover that rail trail and work toward that. It will be used more than or as much as any other trail. And the trail that's being proposed, I don't think will be used much at all.
Okay.
It will cost also about 3 times as much. So there's a lot of negatives about it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comment, and I'll have them answer the questions after, if there's any other public comments after that.
And I do not see any other members of the public, and we have not received any written comments on this
Okay.
item.
So Ken and Steve, did you get that question from Mr. Diedler?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Appreciate the question. The answer is Yes, it is parallel to 116 all the way down to Stony Point and then parallel to Stony Point. That is the answer to the question. And there's a vast amount of background. I will simply summarize that if the county thought there was any chance of feasibility of the railroad, that would be the preferred alternative. But we don't, for a whole bunches of reasons. We're not going to condemn people's homes. We're not going to take people's backyards. We just aren't. We don't own the land. We don't have any owners who are out there. So we believe that the trail will be as successful as the very similar condition north of town along Andes, by Andes Market, very similar, well used, highly trafficked, well loved. We think it will be similarly well loved. In fact, we're also working on a similar situation in Sonoma Valley. They also lost their railroad right of way decades and decades ago, just like here. And the bikeway we're working on for Sonoma Valley is parallel to Highway 12. We wish it was further out, but too late. We're decades too late. But it will still be a wonderful community asset, and it'll actually be far cheaper than trying to take millions and millions of dollars of people's private property. Thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying on that. Okay, so bring it back to commissioners for discussion. What we're trying to get to, if the commission is on par with it, is to make a recommendation to City Council. So if there's any discussion on this item, or if someone wants to make a motion, and we can discuss it after that as well. So open to if any commissioner wants to make any comments or discussion on this.
I'm happy
Vice
to.
Chair Fritz, go ahead.
I'm happy to make a motion that we suggest that the council support a resolution of, approve a resolution of support for this proposed trail. I think it'd be a great asset, and I think, as has been mentioned, the city has been working well with the regional parks for decades, and I think that's a good opportunity for us to continue to do that.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So open up for any discussion or any additional questions, comments from commissioners. Okay. I think it's a worthy cause. I mean, of course, we would have rather had the railroad right away, but it's better than not having any trails. So hopefully appreciate all the work you guys have done, and make the best of it from according to the situations we have. So, okay, so we have a motion and a second, and I'll ask Director Swanson to do a roll call for votes, please.
Thank you, Chair Fernandez. We will start, as I'm seeing people on my screen, Commissioner Lindenbush.
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly.
Yes.
Commissioner Haug.
Aye.
Commissioner Dauch.
Aye.
Commissioner Ottinger.
Aye.
Vice Chair Fritz.
Aye.
And Chair Fernandez.
Yes.
All right, so that motion passes 7-0 unanimously. Thank you all very much. And we will be scheduling this for a presentation to the City Council in the coming weeks, and we'll certainly let you know when that is going to be, in case any of you want to join that meeting as well.
Great. And again, thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve and Ken. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chair.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay,
Okay,
so
thank you, and I'll add that our hope is to start with the section coming right out of Sebastopol down to Bloomfield. That's our hope for the first phase. So I think that would offer immediate benefit for a large portion of the community. Thank
Great.
you.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you, Steve. And I will note that when I originally went through this with Steve in one of our meetings, I noticed that the Sebastopol portion of it, which wasn't done when the plan was passed along Petaluma Avenue, is now completed. So the city portion is already done. It would be great, and it's wonderful news to hear that you'll be starting with the city, from there down for those who live on the south side of town.
Okay. Again, thank you. All right, so I'm going to move on to item 6B, Planning Commission composition. Discuss and provide recommendations on any changes to the Planning Commission's composition to the City Council for their consideration. This is a City Council request, and I'll let Carrie go ahead and give us kind of a summary on this and what we are looking to do this evening.
Thank you, Chair Fernandez. So I believe at your last meeting or one of the last meetings, I had mentioned that the City Council had requested to discuss this item. And so we did have a couple of the commissioners, Commissioner Fritz and I believe Lindenbush attended that meeting. If I have that in my notes right. I know Vice Chair Fritz made a public comment, so I know he was there. The City Council discussed it. They did recommend that the Planning Commission review this item, and there are a few different items involved with looking at the Planning Commission composition and provide a formal recommendation back to the City Council. As noted in the staff report, this item is looking at ways to increase public involvement and citizen participation. One of the things that was discussed in the commission resident survey, which had, I think it was approximately half the residents were from the zip code, but outside city limits, and the other half of respondents were within city limits. And a number of people had commented about wanting to get more involved with the city. So the City Council discussed a number of different options. One was potentially increasing the number of out of city limit seats on the commission. Right now we have one. So just to give an overview of the commission, I'm sure you're all familiar with it. Currently we have 7 commissioners and 1 alternate. Kate Haug is the alternate currently, and we do have 1 vacancy of the 7, although obviously Kate is here as a voting commissioner in the interim. The City Council did say, they were just wanting to leave that seat vacant until they heard from the commission, especially since one of the options is that came up was to potentially eliminate the alternate position and simply have 7 commissioners, and in doing so transferred Kate from an alternate position to a member of the commission, a full member of the commission. A number of things there are a lot of different options for it. The City Council did hear from the commissioners at the meeting, and the sense that I had gotten from the prior comments that increasing the number beyond the current composition is not something that the council is interested in. So it's really looking at the overall number of seats is one issue. Should it remain 7 + 1, or I know Vice Chair Fritz recommended that it be reduced in size in his public comments, and that's one item to discuss. Another item that came up was how many seats could be out of city limits, and then also what out of city limits means. Right now we allow 1 seat from the 95472 zip code. But it was raised that the zip code is actually a really large region. It goes all the way up to Occidental, Forestville, and then geographically it doesn't go very far to the east. And so some communities like Cloverdale or Sonoma, which do allow seats from outside city limits as well as smaller cities with a sort of broader rural area around. However, Cloverdale is, I believe it's 2 miles outside of city limits. So we do have the capabilities with GIS now to kind of draw that buffer and understand a distance radius instead of the zip code. And then Sonoma laws from Sonoma Valley, not just anywhere outside of the city limits in the zip code. It's specific to the kind of the valley that's immediately adjacent to the city. So that's another thing to look at. A fourth consideration that was raised was that we don't, and this is sort of in the context of the outside of city sort of non-residents. We currently also allow business owners to be full commissioners as a criteria. One of the things that the council raised was, well, we don't actually have a requirement that a certain percentage, like a majority, be residents. Is that something that we should actually put into our code? And obviously the council has flexibility right now to appoint or not appoint based on their discretion, so they can, by default, I don't think we've ever had a commission composition that isn't a majority of residents, but it was a factor that they wanted your opinion on in terms of if there should be a specific requirement in the ordinance regarding a majority of the commissioners to be city residents. There are a number of different options and ways to look at this, and I know a number of commissioners have been thinking about this from time to time, so I will stop my staff report there and open up for any questions and your considerations.
And so the plan is to ask questions of staff. We need any kind of clarifications, and then open up to public comment, and then we'll bring it back to the commissioners. I think there may be one or two of those items that I think we have a pretty good consensus according to the last meeting that we had, and we can either approve those individually, or if we feel as a group, depending on how the comments go forward on that. So I had a question to start with. Was there also consideration to if a individual like just happened, was on the planning commission appointed and they move out of the area, was that also a point to discuss as to what to do in those particular situations?
Thank you, Chair Fernandez. Yes, that was one of the considerations in the staff report. I think because in the middle of the staff report, I found out about the commissioner moving to Collins, and I wasn't planning on it. My housing situation changed, and so yeah, so I was thinking about, well, okay, especially if you're so the way the ordinance is written currently is that the council can appoint up to one member that's in outside city limits but in the zip code. The potential is to increase that, but it does allow the council flexibility so that they don't have to appoint any that are outside of city limits. So that kind of, in my mind, it raises the questions of, well, what if you have someone like just happened who is on the commission, is a resident, and then ends up having to move outside? What should the process be? Should it shouldn't necessarily, should it be a, well, if there's a seat available then it's automatic, or should it be something where because who knows what the actual circumstances is of the individual and how connected they'll be with the city? Should it be an item that city council reviews, not necessarily an interview, but a review and assessment of whether or not it's appropriate for that person to continue on the commission. I think one of the ties to that is the commission survey that was done and the subsequent city council discussion. They did talk about the survey was highly weighted on homeowners and not so much on tenants. And tenants are more likely to move around than homeowners are, just in terms of statistically length of occupancy of a home. And so in some ways, if there was a little bit of flexibility there, that could potentially support someone who is say they're a resident in town and they're working in town, and then they end up moving out of town, but they're still working in town. Are they still very connected to town? Probably. Their living circumstances just happen to change. And so that is something that, especially if you're recommending more than one out of zip code seat, where one could potentially be available, that how to handle that would be great to include in the recommendation. And I should note, we do have one zip code, I don't know how you call it, out of city limit, the zip code commissioner right now. That's Commissioner Ottinger, who lives just literally on the other side of the road from the city limits. So certainly, we have a lot of out of bounds, and I'm happy to share the zip code map if any of you would like to see that in large on the screen if you wanted to look more closely at that.
Questions for staff? Commissioner Ottinger. You're muted. Yep. Thank you.
So if we were going to appoint someone outside the city, no, maybe rephrase that. My question was, you have someone who's inside the city, they get appointed to the commission, and then they move, but they work inside the city. Right now, working inside the city isn't considered a reason you have to own the business. Is that correct?
Correct. Currently, we have business owners is an eligible criteria, so you can own a business but not be a resident. But you can't be just an employee within city limits. That does not qualify you.
So you're thinking of changing it so you could be that's one of the options. To say that you could be an employee inside the city.
Well, so I don't know if, that is an option. I did get a question actually from Vice Chair Fritz earlier today, so I'll go ahead and kind of answer that because it may play into this of if other towns allow business owners for as an eligibility criteria, and at least within Sonoma County, no one else allows that even, so that's actually already a bit of flexibility. Having a business owner, and I think the idea behind that is, they have a financial stake in an investment in the town, and so that's that's similar to being a resident and spending all your money here and being part of the town. And so it wouldn't, so Commissioner Ottinger, the possibilities are if you're still employed within city limits, but it could simply be that it's, if you have 2 seats outside of city limits, but only one of them is filled, if someone simply moves, how to handle that? Is that allowed? Is it reviewed and then okay by council as just an agenda item, or what happens with that?
Just a point of clarification, Kerry, if you could, please. Sure. The current ordinance says that the 6 of the commissioners need to be resident or need to be, it's resident, right? Not property owner.
Either a resident or a business owner.
Yeah, okay.
So in theory, there could be 7 non-resident business owner with 1 person outside. Right, in theory.
Correct. Under our current ordinance, that is actually a possibility. As obviously it's up to council, and I don't think they would ever. They'd probably be cognizant of that if that was starting to happen. But technically, yes, you could have a completely non-resident planning commission.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and open public comment. Anybody from the public would like to comment on this item?
Okay, and I have not received any written comments for this item. Okay. And I do not see any public comments either.
Okay. All right, so go ahead and close that. And I'm going to bring it back. What I'd like to do is just a break from normal procedures is I'm going to start out the comment. I've been on the Planning Commission for 10 years. And then I'm going to have Vice Chair Fritz and then Commissioner Kelly, who's also had a lot of experience, and then we'll kind of go from there on that. And if you could comment kind of on the different items, how you're feeling about that, or if you have any further questions or so forth on there. So I'm going to start by I think everybody's in agreement. And I know that based on the notes in the meeting that the city council is in agreement of eliminating the alternate position. So I think that that's something that's hasn't been needed. As I've mentioned, I've been on the Planning Commission for 10 years, and I think one time we had an issue with a quorum, and that was through miscommunication. And other than that, we haven't really had that kind of a problem. As far as how to handle that transition, I mean, I guess that's kind of up to the council. It's a one-time thing. If they're going to eliminate the alternate position, my feeling is why not just make that person into, since we have an open position available, transfer them over. But that's a kind of a council decision on that. Regarding the number of commissioners, I've kind of gone back and forth on that. I mean, 5 would be less and more in some ways efficient. And the reason I know that 7 is because you want more people commenting, but really there is the ability for someone who doesn't agree with the commission to petition for the city council to review it. And then oftentimes we're not making policy, we're just making recommendations to city council. But then on the other hand, with having the 7, one thing I like is the fact that it gives you more opportunity to talk to more commissioners regarding the Brown Act. So if we had 5, you can only talk to one other person, and it's very limited on that. Whereas with 7, you can at least have 3 people on the committee, or you can talk to 2 other individuals on there. So I was kind of looking at it that way from that standpoint. I definitely think that we should be very specific in indicating that the majority of planning commission, whether it's, I think it should be at least 4, possibly maybe 5, should be from city residents. Those decisions are made. It impacts, someone in a neighborhood is having some project, it impacts that person. If I was coming in front of the planning commission for some project and everybody was from out of town, I think I'd have a little issue with that, people making decisions that maybe doesn't directly affect them. I think it's good to have one individual, at least from the 9547 that's outside of city limits. And, whether it's 1 or 2, I don't have really a strong feeling on that. I think, 1 is good, at least. And then I think it should just be encompassing the entire 9547 too. I don't look at it as, okay, let's make it 2 miles because, well, okay, what about the person that's 2 miles and 50 yards from there? And a person that's 2 miles, as an example, isn't necessarily more in tune and more active with the city. It could be somebody that lives 5 miles away is more involved and more active. So I think the distance from the city limits doesn't necessarily, in my opinion, determine how dedicated or how much someone is supportive of the city or involved in that standpoint. So let's see. The other question. Let's see. Also, I think it should be spelled out what happens if a commissioner moves out. My concern is that if you leave it up to interpretation for council, whoever to decide, you could get an issue where someone moves out and they're more favored, and so they're made an exception to say, to stay on commission, and someone else, same thing, moves out, but maybe they're not as supported, and it's a decision that they're not going to transition. So it's just too arbitrary in my mind. I think it should be specific. Either someone moves out and they have to give up their seat, or they move out, and if there is a 95472 seat available, that they could move into that position rather than the council decide, well, we're going to now have two, outside positions if that wasn't, the case in the beginning. And I think let's see, I think those were all the issues that we were talking about from that. So those are my comments, and I'll pass it on to Vice Chair Fritz on yours.
Thanks. So I guess I'll start by saying that, I mean, if the council's goal is to increase, participation in meetings or the community, giving people opportunity, I don't quite see why allowing one more seat in the outside the city limits does that. It gives one more person a more direct vote, but in terms of increasing overall participation in city business, it doesn't really, I don't really see how that impacts that. If we want more people to come to meetings, we need to, maybe change the time of meetings or, advertise them better, or, I don't know exactly how to get more people to want to come to a planning commission meeting. But I don't think allowing one other person outside the city limits does that. So I guess if that's the intention of that, I'm not particularly in favor of that, because I don't see that as being really have anything to do with that. I will say that I think, 3 and 4 hour planning commission meetings discourage people from coming to planning commission meetings. I mean, there's certainly been meetings where, we have 2 or 3 items on an agenda and someone wants to speak on the second item and we don't get to the second item until 9:30. And they've left because they've been sitting here for 2.5 hours. So, I think that's a bigger issue in terms of participation. And to be quite honest, 7 and 8 people, there have been plenty of meetings that have kind of big contentious issues on them when we had 8 commissioners present, and it takes a long time to get through everyone's comments and have a dialogue. And so that's coming around to saying that I am in favor of decreasing the size altogether. And I'm certainly in favor of getting rid of the alternate position. I've never understood, as Everett mentioned, I've never been on the commission where we had a quorum issue. So it seems like it was a solution looking for a problem that never really happened. And at this point, since we do have a vacancy, I'd certainly be in favor of just moving Kate from the alternate to a full position at this point. I would also be in favor of allowing, through attrition, the commission to eventually get down to 5 people. And I know the council has said, or some members of the council I know have said in the past that they want, more voices to be heard, and, that's great and all, but there's only 5 city council members, so, and they have a lot broader, make a lot more bigger decisions that impact the city. If we want more broader, decision-making, maybe we should have 7 city council members, and they can have 5-hour meetings, which I know they do already. I know they already have very long meetings. So anyway, I don't, again, see, I think we would have adequate conversation with 5 of us, and not that I'm trying to get rid of any of us. I think we all work well together, and I think this is a good commission. But again, over time, I think allowing it to go down to 5 is, I would be in favor of that. And I think, as you can see from the staff report, a lot of communities have only 5. Some bigger communities have only 5, and it seems to work out fine for them. Also, kind of going back to the, adding another person outside of the city limits. I already think, Sebastopol seems to be pretty generous in that fact. It sounds like none of the other, Cloverdale allows this 2-mile distance. Sonoma allows someone from Sonoma Valley, but most cities do not allow someone outside the city limits. And we seem to be the only one that allows business owners that live outside the city limits. So, we already have, I think, allow some representation from outside the city limits. And to be quite honest, I believe that, we have jurisdictional boundaries, and they they do mean something when you have a boundary. And that's, we all participate in other communities. We all go to Santa Rosa, we go to Petaluma. I spend a lot of time in Santa Rosa shopping and visiting friends and doing business, but I don't get to sit on any commissions or boards in Santa Rosa because I'm not a resident of Santa Rosa. And so I think that, that does mean something. What else I want to say?
If someone moves out of the area.
I'm sorry, what was that?
If someone moves out of the
If someone
area.
moves out of city limits, I guess, again, I'm kind of the opinion that, if we had the current situation where we allow a business owner or one other person who lives outside city limits, I guess I would say that if the person who moved outside of the city limits is a business owner, I would be fine with them just staying on the commission since that's allowed. And if the outside city limits seat is available, then I would be fine with them just sort of moving into that seat. But if we only allow, if it says that, again, if it currently is, and, if ever it moves out of the city limits, I'd say, sorry, Kathy's already on and she's representing outside of the city. And unless you owned a business in Sebastopol and you could do that, then I guess I would say I'm not particularly in favor of changing that for any reason. What else? I'm okay with if we wanted to, say a majority of, make a change to say a majority of the commission has to live within the city limits. I'm fine with that. I don't have a super strong feeling about that because I think since the council appoints commissioners, they obviously have control over that process and they could, make sure that that is the case. But if we want to codify that in the ordinance, I'm okay with that. Let's see. I'm also, I guess I'm more in favor of setting a distance limit from the city. I looked online at the zip code map and it is huge. It goes from, Bloomfield, Valley Ford Road, literally up to the Russian River in Monte Rio and all the way to Occidental and down Bohemian. It's a very large area. So I guess I would be in favor of setting some kind of limit. If it's 2 miles, I don't know exactly what that is, but it's all somewhat arbitrary. Like it was mentioned, the east side of, it goes to Lano Road in some parts, but some parts it doesn't even go as far as Lano Road. I know there's probably nobody living out there anyway, so it doesn't really matter, but people live along Lano Road or just beyond, and that's pretty close to town versus Monte Rio. So it's all a bit arbitrary, and I guess I would be more inclined to have arbitrary as a set distance around the whole perimeter of the town. I don't know exactly what that looks like, and I guess I would be curious what that looks like. I don't really know how far 2 miles outside of town goes. Is that Grayton Road to the north, or is that, I don't really know, Green Valley Road, or what would that include? So I'd be kind of curious to see, some different options for that, I guess, before making a final decision. So I think I covered all the various options at this point. I guess I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Great. Okay. Commissioner Kelly?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I tend to agree with Everett and Paul on most of the items. I think down to 5 would be fine. In terms of the alternate, I was never for it, but it wasn't our decision. And I think to eliminate now the alternate position And then since we have an opening on the commission, then leave it up to the council to appoint that commissioner, not just move the alternate automatically into that position. I'm fine with our business owner being outside resident. I never thought about it. It could be all 6 or 7 planning commissioners. So I would recommend one business owner that lives outside of town. If a commissioner moves, I think they would have to resign unless they were a business owner or there was an opening in the 95472. Now reducing the size of people that would be eligible. I know our sphere of influence would probably be too small, but I definitely think it's a good idea to rein that in. Ukiah is looking at the same thing right now, and their sphere of influence goes from ridgeline to ridgeline, and then including, Ukiah city limits. So it's actually a very big sphere of influence. I wouldn't recommend that big. Let's see, did I miss anything of our list here? The size, I think I hadn't thought about 5 being adequate. We have 5 members doing the city council. Maybe I think down to 5 through attrition would be okay as well. I think it would be more efficient. I think the issue with the alternate is, doesn't seem fair to them that they have participated in discussions and then can't vote on the ultimate item. And then all that, discussion time has happened. Anything I didn't cover, Everett?
I think
you
you
want to know?
I think you hit all the points there.
Okay. Well, then I guess we should move to the next person. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Dauch.
Yeah, happy to jump in. I agree with you guys. I certainly, the alternate is an easy one. And I agree with Commissioner Kelly's thoughts that the City Council could nominate the existing alternate into a full position. That would seem appropriate to me. As to, generally the composition, I don't disagree that it could be 5 and it could be effective as 5. The only reasons I can think to keep it at 7 is with the number of subcommittees and that kind of other tangent tasks. That can be useful to have some extra additional members to take on those roles. But other than that, I don't think that would, become problematic with 5. But 7 does have its benefits with regard to that and the Brown Act issue that Everett mentioned earlier. I'm in favor of the 95472 boundary. Mostly because it exists and because wherever I go in the 95472 boundary and all the people I know who live there identify with Sebastopol as the hub, even if they live close to Occidental or Forestville or out toward the river. I think most of those folks think of Sebastopol as that hub and not some, perhaps some as you get up to River Road, maybe more connected to Santa Rosa. But I just feel that there is a connection almost historically through the, agricultural community that spread from this town of sort of doing business here, so to speak. I think with 7 members, it's, I think we should have a majority of residents, and I think the ordinance should probably be adjusted to reflect that. But I also think that if we have a 7-member board, having as many as 2 outside of the city, I think is reasonable. But I do think that at least one of those should have some other connection to the city, whether they own property inside the city limits or are employed full-time in the city limits. I think it's important to have some form of connection because I think that it helps you be, invested in the decisions that are being made. And I think that is important. If, for instance, someone that owns commercial property in town or a rental in town, I don't think should be excluded completely. So having an extra opening for that, having some flexibility with 2 members for that, I think is appropriate. Let's see. The other reason to have the broader have 2 members that are from the broader community is simply, how many times have we been to through the nomination process and had one available candidate for 2 positions or more. It's hard to fill the positions. Now that could be an argument to go to 5 commissioners too as well. So it cuts both ways, but such as it is. As to commissioners having to leave if their circumstances change, I'm sympathetic with the comments that Commissioner Fritz made. But I would also say that maybe one way to think about it is if a person is in the first half of their tenure or their what's the word I'm looking for, their 4 years, their term. I would say if they're in their first half of their term and the situation changes, maybe they should resign their position. But equally, I think if they're into the second half of their tenure, it may be perfectly reasonable to let them serve that out. Things don't change rapidly on the commission. We don't move from issue to issue every week. We tend to have issues that span a few months at a time. So even if you are ending up on the commission another year or so, it's likely that you're closing out business more than you're. It's circumstantial, of course, but you know what I mean. There's often business that is having that familiarity with can be useful. So it's not. It takes new commissioners a good while to get comfortable in the role and to get up to speed on all the many issues and the sort of historical actions that have been taken and how things have been thought out in the past and all of that. So anyway, those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's see, Commissioner Lindenwood.
Thank you, Chair Fernandez. So I'll start with the alternate position elimination. I think we're in unanimous agreement on that. And I agree with Commissioner Kelly that we should leave that to the City Council to fill that seat. I would probably be more in favor of acclamation given Commissioner Halleck's service if it were an uncontested seat. But given I don't know if Bo Anderson lives outside of 72 or all of those sort of factors, I think it's just best to go back to the council probably. In regard to moving to a 5-member commission, I agree as I see a lot of commissions and bodies that work with 5 people very well, that could be very effective. I am a little concerned given that we have no term expiring at the end of this year, if commissioners decide to stay on for multiple terms and we're sort of moving very, very slowly whittling down to 5, I could see that, even taking up to a decade. So I wouldn't want to see a planning commission with no new members for many years. I think that would be counterproductive and ultimately kind of anti-democratic. So I think a situation like that, even if it sounds really good, could sort of just, keep the commission more stagnant than we would want it to be. So next I'll address an idea I had in terms of kind of a new way of thinking about kind of more radial as opposed to the zip code. When I was looking at the Cloverdale circumstance, I wasn't thinking about it as sort of 2 miles from the outline of the city limits, but as I eventually found out that was the case, but thought, what would it be like if you just kind of made a radius around a central point in town? And the first one I checked was the intersection of Main Street and Bodega. I think, many of us could agree that's kind of the gravitational center of town, and just thought, okay, how far is it until you hit the nearest jurisdiction, in this case, which is the populated areas of City of Santa Rosa. Turns out from point A to point B is exactly 3 miles. So, if we drew a 3-mile circle around that point, I figured what would it look like? I looked at some of the points along that radius. On the north end, you have Summerfield Waldorf. Toward the northeast, toward the northwest, you have Hallberg Butterfly Garden in Grayton. To the west, you have Bill's Farm Basket. To the south, you have Garlock Tree Farm on Pleasant Hill Road. And again, to the southeast, you have the Southwest Santa Rosa border at Wright Road and Ledwig. So just kind of wanted to give a little bit of a landmark sense of what that kind of radius might look like. But I do agree with Councilmember Slater's comments that the 95472 zip code isn't necessarily comprehensive, in part because you can apply for a commission if you live in Occidental, but not if you live off of Occidental Road, just east of town. So I think that's something that could be fixed by sort of a radial overlay, whether that's in combination with the 95472 zip code or not. I think, again, we can leave that up to the council. But I also am concerned if we stick with 95472 zip code as a metric, that we're excluding the 95444 zip code, which is the little hole in the middle of the 95472 zip code that is there just because Grayton has a post office. So, and I don't really see the reason to, for someone who lives, in Forestville, Occidental, Freestone, to be able to apply for our commission when someone from Grayton cannot. Again, I'm not completely wedded to the 95472 zip code as a metric, but I just think that's an inconsistency that, it should be 95472 and 95444 if we're going to be going with that sort of bigger West County definition. So I think that's it for me. I think there's a lot of room for flexibility here. It could be, that maybe we have up to, really hard and fast rule, up to 3 commissioners living outside of city limits, if with no more than one outside of the 3-mile radius or something like that, just to make sure we don't have a bunch of business owners from outside of city limits. But if we have 1 or 2, that's okay. So I think there's some room for flexibility in that, while again, I think getting to sort of the larger issue, which I don't think that having 5 or 7 commissioners really comes down to public participation at all, but I think comes down to the fact that council has a hard time recruiting for these roles pretty consistently. And, there's a lot of people who apply. Some cycles, they have to kind of re-extend the deadlines. So I think giving them the flexibility to be able to fill these positions, allow our commissions and committees to do the work, but make it as fair as possible. So I think that could be one opportunity for, making sure a majority of the city council, again, 4 would have to live within city limits. And then a super majority could live kind of within that radius of 6. And then a 7th could be, in Occidental or Freestone or whatever. So would love to hear what the commission has to think about that, but those are my thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up about the 95444. It's a good point. Commissioner Ottinger.
Yeah, I think 7 is a good number for the council. And I think so because it allows us to have a broad range of professions and experiences. I think that we should leave it up to the council to reappoint the position when there's a vacancy. I'm okay with retiring the alternate. I appreciate being on the planning commission. For years people asked me and they didn't realize I wasn't in the city. I'm in the sphere of influence and the city wraps around me, and I have been involved in politics and planning and policy for many years. So I can understand people just living outside the city and having that same experience that I've had living in Sebastopol. I fully know I don't live in the city, but I'm certainly involved in it, and I know other people who are too, who live outside. So I was actually surprised when the position came up, but I was grateful that it did. I think, again, it offers the opportunity to be more inclusive in the community and to draw more people in to the Planning Commission, making decisions for how to grow this small town, which is kind of a unique situation. I think it's an important thing that we are inclusive. And I think that right now, that's what the council is trying to do based on its consultant's report, that people do want to be inclusive. So I am in support of having up to 2 people outside the city as long as the majority is within the city. I like the idea of the radius versus the a mile or 2 miles contiguous to the outside border. I often think of the center of town actually as being kind of Jewel and Bodega rather than downtown, because it's really more central. I think Ice Park and the Firehouse as being the center of town physically. And I would support a 1 or probably a 2 mile radius outside from that. I think is a good indication of people being close to town and being part of it on a regular basis, knowing that we have a business people who could be farther out. And I think that covers all the issues.
Yeah, great, thank you. Commissioner Howell.
Well, I mean, this is interesting since I am the alternate. I would just say that being the alternate, I've enjoyed it a lot. I think it offers an opportunity for someone like myself who's very new to this to learn without having the responsibilities of a vote. I'm sympathetic to what everyone's saying about the time of the meetings. So I would say, for me, being the alternate is not a frustrating position, but it's an opportunity to learn. I tend to enjoy hearing other people's thoughts and opinions, so I appreciate a 7-member commission because I think it brings a lot of different perspectives. And I've actually watched within our own commission meetings, people change their minds by hearing what other people had to say, which I thought was remarkable. And I really appreciate that about the commission because I feel in this particular group, people really do listen and consider what each other say and bring to the table. For instance, Commissioner Lindenbusch's idea about the radius, I appreciate that idea and I think it's a good one and I wouldn't have thought of it myself, so I appreciate all the different mind share and the knowledge that we create as a community. So in that way, I think, there's pros in having more people that if you have a good selection, you actually create more knowledge and new ideas and new opportunity. But the con, is the time that it takes to do that, to generate that knowledge. So yeah, in terms of the alternate position, I only have my perspective from it. I haven't been, with other, I'm not a commissioner, I'm an alternate. And so I can't really speak from a commissioner's perspective on that. I do think that the majority of commissioners should be residents, and I'm open to, flexibility either with 2 seats out, with one of them having a stake in the town, being a business owner, a full-time employee, or a commercial property owner. And I think that it should be clarified in the ordinance to some degree, just because I think that will be helpful in the future. And I think that's all I have to say.
Okay. And just to correct you, you are a commissioner tonight.
I am tonight.
Yes. So,
Hey, Everett.
Yes.
Chair Everett.
Yes.
Linda Kelly here.
Yeah.
I forgot my comment, if it's okay to do a little edit to it.
Yeah. Sure.
I talked about a business owner being a non-resident, but I'm not in favor of adding 2 more outside residents. I think it's a little too much. I don't agree that it should just be a majority. I think 1 outside and then 1 business owner who is a non-resident. I could be okay with it being, a commercial owner. I don't know how I feel about a full-time employee since there's so few full-time jobs, as we know. So that might be a little bit of a far stretch, but yes, the investment. And some planning commissions, you have to have experience in planning or design or something like that. And, you know, I think we're pretty generous. I mean, I'm a nurse. What do I know about planning except for planning, you know, care and all of that. So, so I don't know if I agree that it has to be always an experienced person, but there are some cities where it's pretty strict in that way, or jurisdictions. So, and in terms of the number 5, I'm just going to say the county has only 5 planning commissioners. They seem to get their work done even though they meet a lot. So, okay, thank you for letting me interject.
Okay, great. Carrie, where do we take it from here? I don't know if we want to take, I know it sounds like the recommendation of eliminating the alternate position is, I think, close to unanimous. I'm not sure Kate comments on that, but certainly a majority of that. I think everyone is of the opinion to have to specifically specify in the wording of having a majority, maybe even specifying a number, 4 or 5 of the 7 to be from within the city limits resident. And I thought I heard the majority indicate that probably it's reducing it down to 5 through attrition should be something to be considered, in which case, if that happens, then, you know, want to keep the same wording as far as a majority, have, you know, 3 people of the 5 to be to be within city limits, and then it may change it to then say, okay, well, maybe we don't want 1 or anybody from the outside, or maybe we only want 1 or 2. So I think it's important if we do, if they do decide to reduce it to 5, to also consider the ramifications and revisit what's considered a majority, or, you know, inside, outside, that kind of things from that. I think I heard the majority also indicate a radius, I believe, to be considered. And I think what I heard was 1, that a business owner or an outside resident. So it could, 2 would be a maximum based on those issues. I think an employee, it sounds like it's too volatile sometimes. You know, if someone's a business owner, they're going to be around, or if they have a property. If someone's an employee, they could be employed for 2 months and then now they're gone, and now you have that situation. So I don't know if that's something that I would recommend. It didn't sound like anyone else on there. And then I wasn't really clear on, I think we were kind of split on what the council might want to do with filling that extra position from the alternate. So I think that one, I'm not really clear on what the consensus is on that. So did I summarize that well, and to make someone to make a motion on that, or do we want to take them individually, or what? You have any suggestion, kind of listening in, Carrie, on all that?
Sure. So the things that there were some areas where people were split a little bit. What I heard from everybody though was to go down to 7 members by eliminating the alternate, if not fewer, but you know, certainly go down to 7, and that a majority should always be residents, and we should clarify that in the language. How the outside city limits, I think there were a number of different things that I heard, you know, from 1 business owner and 1 outside resident, so that there would be, you know, and I guess if a business owner also resides in town, like Vice Chair Fritz, then he would count as a resident, not as a business owner, in terms of that slot for. So those are some minutia to clarify, I think. But you know, so those were the ones that were absolutely. I think it'd be nice to hear a little bit more discussion on the, because it was sort of evolving in comments, is the distance outside of the city. And because the radius idea, or the radius from the center of town, and whether that center of town is Main and Burnett, or whether it's Ives Park, basically, I'll say, and a buffer outside of that. And I did hear both 1 mile and 2 mile. I believe Luke talked about 3 miles, but then that gets to downtown Santa Rosa, basically. So, so I think a little bit more discussion on the outside city limits, and now that everyone has heard each other's thoughts, might be helpful to see if there's a consensus on that.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Dowd.
I would. I think Luke's points were, well made and well taken. And this, he came up with 3 miles and had a good, I think, set of landmarks that demonstrate that 3 miles is appropriate. If measured from that Bodega and Main, to the east, it's the edge of the, I think you said the edge of the kind of populated zone of Santa Rosa. And certainly it encapsulates a number of areas that makes a lot of sense. So I think if you're doing a radial, I very much like Luke's suggestion. I also agree with you, Luke, about 95404, and I'd sort of forgotten about that little pocket there, but you're absolutely right. You need, if we do go into a use the zip code, I think it would be important to include that. I think generally, I'm okay with the geographical area being larger, especially with the pool of people. If we're only really looking at 2 people out of the 7, I think it's going to self-regulate to a certain extent. I can't imagine that we're going to have someone from way out who really has no, if they're interested in being on the commission, presumably they are because they have some significant interest. So I'm not convinced the zip code isn't reasonable, but I'm certainly not wedded to that. And I very much like Luke's thinking in regard to radial if we go that route.
As far as the majority, I'd like to be specific as to say 5. If we're at 7 right now, to specifically say that 5 need to be from residents, and then with as many as 2 from outside. I mean, they could be all 7 could be residents, but at least 5 of them. I like to be that specific, if that's consensus.
I would suggest moving it to 4, just in the event that, just because we have two members currently who live outside of city limits. So if we had, 1 more who applied who was a business owner, I think just giving the council that small amount of flexibility might be helpful while still keeping a majority in city limits.
So that would be 3 though from outside, or as many as 3.
I mean, I would say that I'm okay with 3 outside, but I would say 2 of them have to be business owners and only 1 is not a business owner. So I guess I would still, kind of stay, which is kind of the way it is now. We don't have a limit on business owners at this point. We just have a limit on not a business owner, not a resident, only 1. And I'm kind of in favor of keeping that the way it is. And I'm fine with having 2 business owners. So I guess I'll leave it at that. But I'd keep with just 1 non-business owner, non-resident outside city limits. And actually, I'll weigh in on the I like the radius idea. I don't have a strong opinion of Ives Park versus Main Street and Bodega. I don't know exactly what the center of town is, but
we're just making your house.
That's fine. I live about the same distance from either of those places. So yeah, I don't have a strong opinion. I think the radius is a little bit arbitrary anyway. So where the center of the radius is just as arbitrary, And the thing I like about the radius versus the 95472 is just that it does pick up that eastern, east of town. The zip code drops off very rapidly when you go east. So I think that the radius is nice because it makes it kind of more, even though most of the population tends to be to the west, it does, will allow, like you said, kind of out by Summerfield and Occidental Road and some neighborhoods that, you know, that are currently not eligible.
Are those, if someone, so you're saying someone like say from the 95465 or 9, are those considered Sebastopol addresses? And somebody, when somebody has their address in those zip codes, do they put down Sebastopol or are they indicating other cities? You know, Carrie?
So it will depend. I do know, because I used to live in unincorporated on the south side of town, close to where the trail is slated to go, actually. The southern and I think quite a bit of the western and eastern zip code areas would say Sebastopol, and I think it's the Occidental, Great, and Forestville areas where in Monte Rio where they probably start to have a different town designation, even though the zip code is the same. I'm not exactly sure where the breakdown is on that, but yeah, and frankly, as the planning department, we answer calls all the time from people who think they're in city limits, and they call us for, you know, their zoning information. And this, you know, the first question you ask is, okay, what's your actual address? And, you know, there's a 50-50 chance that they're actually in the county and of the calls that we get. So there's definitely a strong identification. I am trying to just do a real quick map that has the radius so that you can all see, and I can put that on the screen. So I'll try to do that with the 3-mile radius, which I can get my GIS skills going while you guys are discussing it. And so for the majority though, so what I've written down from folks is, assuming a 7-member commission, both the Vice Chair Fritz and Commissioner Kelly and Chair Fernandez would want only 2 members, and actually going so far as to designate one business owner and 1 non-business owner. Actually, Vice Chair Fritz, you were okay with 2 business owners, weren't you? But Linda and Everett were both in favor of just 2, and I didn't catch Kathy, Zach, and Kate, your thoughts on those.
I think it depends on whether we have 1 outside person, then do we want 2 other outside business owners? Someone was bringing that up, so you know, I think at that level, the council can decide.
Yeah, and I will note the way the ordinance is written, and what I would strongly recommend is that it always say up to this many number outside the city limits, or up to this many non-resident but business owner / area code.
Yeah, and
or
I mean,
radius, or whatever that outside city limit designation is.
I mean, I'd like to even have it say the majority to be city, just to make that clear, because sometimes it gets a little confusing up to this business owner that, so just, you know, that wording of saying a majority to be, and I think that I think the council, looking at their notes, they were all in favor of that as well. So I would concur with that part.
Yeah, I would concur with that too, and with Paul's point that it could be up to 3 outside, 2 of whom must be business owners. So that would satisfy both those, coming at it from both those directions.
I concur with that as well, and think you know, calling it a majority might make it easier for the council to, moving forward, if it does move down to 5 people, then they won't have to go back and, you know, change the number from 5 to 3 or whatever.
And then in terms of the total number, at least from the initial comments, I had that Kathy and Luke, and I apologize, I'm going to use your first names because it's a lot easier to kind of go through the list. Kathy and Luke were in favor of 7. Zach was in favor of 5, other than potentially staffing subcommittees as a potential issue. And Paul, Linda, and Zach were otherwise in favor of 5. And I'm sorry, I did not catch Chair Fernandez, your.
I'd be in favor of 5.
Okay.
But I think, again, Luke made a great point that if we do that through attrition, that could be a long process. And I would suggest that it may be more about finding an appropriate opportunity when perhaps a couple of commissioners are leaving or something, that change be ready to be made, but be made sort of as a intentional act rather than a simple attrition.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I think that.
Linda Kelly here. I agree. Am I okay to speak?
Yes, please.
Okay, I agree around the attrition issue. We don't want to get ourselves in a situation where it's an even number. So I think the opportunity when there's a couple of openings that aren't, it will take a while, but that would be something we need to make sure doesn't happen. I'm sure the council, it doesn't want that to happen either automatically. So around, if it's a majority, if we go down to 5 members over time, I still think a majority is still too high in number, so I can't go with that because if we go down to 5, ultimately, I'm sure we're going to be looking at this again because it could be a while. It might not. Who knows? But if we go down to 5 and we have 3 outside members, I think that's already going to be. Of course, that's over the majority. So at least the majority have to be. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And perhaps if the commission is supportive, is if they do go down to 5, and I guess maybe the council might want to send it back to the commission to consider that again or look at it. I don't know, but that might be a suggestion as well, because maybe at 5 you do need an alternate. I don't know, but I think it's at least to revisit that issue with the outside, and because now you're down to 5, and if 2 people are from the outside, 3, it's kind of a different percentage change there.
Okay. And just for show and tell sake, I did manage to get the radius of what what a 3-mile radius, and this is from Main Street, looks like. So I think I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but you can kind of zoom in as it goes around so you can kind of see the streets. So it would be basically out to Golden Ridge, just beyond Golden Ridge Road. And then, there's Bloomfield Road, more or less on the bottom side of it. And then I think it goes about out to Wright Road. There's Yano right there, and Wright Road, if you know that, in Santa Rosa. And then on the upper end of it, it's just south of Greenville Road, so right about where Grayton Road is, and includes Occidental Road.
Okay, thank you for that. Was there a consensus on the concept of if someone moves out of the area? I thought I heard the majority say that the seat should be given up, or I believe, is that correct me?
Yeah, that's generally what I heard. There was, I believe, one member noted that if it was someone who had, it was the second part of their term, perhaps that was a reason why they might be able to stay on. Vice Chair Fritz was for just booting them. And of course, all of this would be contingent on there actually being a position open, which it sounds like your recommendation is to leave it more limited on the out of town residents from that side of things.
Did we cover all the points? Then we can make I guess a motion covering those items that I think were a majority, or how would you suggest? Do we take them?
Yeah, it might be helpful to make, if someone is adventurous and wants to do it all in one motion, of course that's possible, but you could also do it in a couple of different passes. One would be sort of looking at what the ultimate size of the commission should be. What I'm hearing from this additional discussion is that at this point, it should go to 7. The council should consider moving it to 5, but do so strategically so that there still are new members coming into the commission, and it's not the existing members with no new members for a long period of time. And so that may be sort of an opportunity that they should be prepared for. And if so, I would advise them to come back to this group to kind of see how that could be structured in that. But, you know, in general, 7 now should be the goal by eliminating the alternate with the council, determining whether they want to appoint the alternate or reopen the position, which of course the alternate would be able to apply to. And so that might be, you know, something like that might be one motion. And then the second is component is the outside city limit structure, the majority of residents outside city structure, and what that radius or geography should look like. That might be easier to do in 2 motions.
Okay. So based on that, I'll go ahead and make a motion on the first that you mentioned with those details, which was at 7, eliminate the alternate, consider going down to 5 with the attrition to make sure we maintain the new, that doesn't stagnate. Basically how you mentioned it, be the motion. Yeah, what she said.
And then did you want to add, did you want to include the majority?
And the majority, yeah.
Residents, or did you want to do that separately?
Yeah, and to specifically word that a majority to be from Sebastopol, and then we can, I think that part, and then we can discuss, I guess in a different motion, whether there should be 1 or 2, or how, you know, the business owners, or unless we have a consensus on that, we can, but at least I guess those parts that I think we're pretty clear on the consensus, we'll make that as one motion. So you want to just clarify that again?
Sure. What I think I heard was eliminate, you're recommending eliminating the alternate and going to 7 members at this time, with a goal of reducing it to 5 at a time when it will still allow for new members to come on board, and not simply through attrition, and therefore in any way that would leave the commission without any new members coming in for a length of time. And that the city council would determine whether or not to move the alternate as a full commission member, or re-advertise that with the alternate to apply if desired.
Okay. So I think we'll just leave it at that, because then once we start talking about the outside, I think it's a little bit hazier. Yes. So, okay. So have motion.
So that's a motion, and so we need a second, if there's a second for that. And
Commissioner Hauge has her hand raised.
Yeah, so after if there's a second, then there's an opportunity for discussion.
I'll second.
Okay. All right, so open that up for discussion. And Kate, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. So if we eliminate the alternate position now, that I would reapply for the commission?
I personally am in favor of you just moving into the seat, but it seemed like most people wanted the council to reappoint someone, but I think I'm okay with Kate just sliding into that seat since she's already been,
I think
elected.
I get the feeling we're probably all okay with that, but I think the view is generally that the city council should make that call. But yes, I think the record should reflect that we're all in favor of having Kate become the full member.
Okay, Chair Fernandez, would you like to amend your motion that the commission is recommending that the alternate move into, and of course, obviously the council's going to decide whatever they want, but if if you wanted to amend your motion.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and amend it. Like I said, they're going to make the final decision on that. So I know not everyone was in agreement with that, but yeah, go ahead, Luke.
Could I just offer a friendly amendment to remove the moving to 5 commissioners? Because I feel like that's a little bit of a separate issue. And I think it's just kind of different. You don't have to accept it.
Yeah, I think I'd like to leave it as is.
Okay, so where we're at is moving to 7 members by eliminating the alternate. The commission you're amending the motion to recommend, for the commission to recommend the alternate move into that position, but the council determine. And then ultimately looking at a goal of moving to 5 members. So that has a amended motion. Is there amended second? Chair Fritz?
Yes.
Okay, so that is the motion on the floor. Any further discussion?
Thank you. So any discussion on those particular, and that particular?
Chair Fernandez?
Yes.
Yeah, I am not in support of our alternate moving in automatically because I still think that if we're eliminating that position and even though there's experience, you can say the majority, but I'm not comfortable with that. I think it should be thrown back and the seat reopened and let who applies.
Could I just clarify? So we're recommending to the council to reevaluate down the road a process for moving to 5 via attrition. That's all that's in the motion,
yeah.
Right? Okay, yeah. That's fine. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I'd like to just leave it as that recommendation to have the, unless you want to take that out, Paul, what do you think? Should we just leave that recommendation? I mean, that's how I feel. The person should just move in, but the council's going to make the decision anyway. So
yeah, I mean, I'm happy keeping that as the recommendation.
Yeah.
And if the council's going to do what the council's going to do,
Yep.
they
Okay.
like to overrule us anyway. So
yeah, that's right. Okay. All right. So is any other discussion on that point? All right. So we have a motion. We have a second, and go ahead and do the roll call for that, please.
Okay. Let's see. Commissioner Dauch. Commissioner Ottinger.
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly.
Aye.
Commissioner Vandenbush.
Aye.
Commissioner Haug.
Aye.
Vice Chair Fritz.
aye.
And Chair Fernandez.
Aye.
Excellent. So that is
Good.
unanimous.
Good.
And so go ahead, Chair. Sorry.
Okay. So now we have, what do we have remaining? We have the radius, right? And the
Right, so the two items are the number, the majority of residents was clearly of interest. What exactly that means and how that's structured is one item. And then, yes, whether it's a radius or zip code or how the outside city limits is defined is the other item.
Okay, because the majority was on the prior motion.
Actually, we left that out to keep it simpler.
Okay, all right.
Just deal with the numbers, so.
Got it. All right. Okay, so do we want to take all those again, or should we just do tackle the majority? I think that was something, I think we might be able to handle that one. And specifically to have the wording say that the majority should be from, and then how many should be as far as outside, I think it's a separate issue.
Yeah, how the outside is structured.
Sure.
So first of all, you're now recommending 7 members. So that makes the scenarios a little bit easier. If
Okay.
they reevaluate and direct moving to 5, then it would come back to this commission. We can deal with
Right.
that scenario at that time. So by making the first motion, we have a little bit simpler. Of 7 members, there was clear consensus of majority, but whether that was 4 or 5 members of the 7 was not unanimous.
Okay. So let's open that up, and then also I guess we can talk about the radius. If we have enough consensus, we can make one motion, or if not, we can split it again into 2 additional motions. So open for discussion or suggestions, comments.
So again, I guess I would be in favor of, if it's 7, 4 must live in the city, 1 can live outside the city, and 2 can be business owners.
Up to, right.
Up to 2.
Yeah.
So 1 that's not a business owner, just an outside resident, and up to 2 business owners of
Okay.
the 7.
And do you envision that they don't have to be, right? So
Yeah,
all 7
no, it's not required. It could be all 7 residents of Sebastopol.
residents. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
but
But
up to, at least 4 have to be residents of Sebastopol. Up to 2 can be business owners that live outside of Sebastopol, and 1 could be a resident, non-business owner that lives outside Sebastopol.
That sounded a lot like a motion, Paul.
That's my.
I was going to say,
I
Vice
make-
Chair, was that a motion?
I'd be happy to
I
second.
just made a motion.
Okay, and we have a second. And now we're open for discussion.
Or a vote.
Yeah. So my only question is the difference between having up to 2 business owners versus 2 residents out on the 95472. What's your thought as to why should be 2 business owners versus?
I just think it's it's more of a investment in the town, and to be honest, as I said earlier, I think it's pretty generous that we're allowing up to 3 people be on our planning commission that don't live in Sebastopol.
Yeah.
I
mean, I'm more supportive of having 5 to live in Sebastopol and 2, but I don't think that was a consensus on that. So.
And I think maybe if you phrase if the phrase is up to 3 commissioners can be from the broader area, 2 of whom must, at a minimum, at least 2 of whom must be business owners.
Yeah, I like that.
Any discussion on that? Or should I call for the motion?
Okay. Commissioner Kelly,
No,
Commissioner Howe,
Aye.
Commissioner Lindenbush,
Aye.
Commissioner Dauch,
Aye.
Commissioner Ottinger,
Aye.
Vice Chair Fritz,
Aye.
and Chair Fernandez.
Aye.
Okay, so that motion passes 6-1.
Okay. And now all that's left is the radius.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll move to recommend to the city council that any qualified applicant to the planning commissioner defined as living outside of city limits may reside within the 95472 zip code, the 95444 zip code, or a 3-mile radius defined around the point at North Main Street and Bodega Avenue.
And just to clarify, Commissioner Lindenbush, is that an and or an or?
It's an and.
Okay, thank you. Otherwise, it's even broader. Okay.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. And discussion on that motion.
And just,
Can you repeat
sorry.
your,
Go ahead,
repeat
Linda.
that motion? I'm sorry. I need a little help.
No problem. Any qualified member of, or qualified applicant to the planning commission living outside the city limits of the city of Sebastopol qualified would be living in the 95472 zip code, 944 zip code, or a 3-mile radius defined around the point at North Main Street and Bodega Avenue.
And it's a non-business owner, right? Or
I would recommend that would be the outside of city limits that could be used for the up to two business owners or up to one non-business owner outside of city limits.
So the non-business owner is the one we're talking about because the business owner could live anywhere, right?
Right. Okay.
Is that what we're?
I thought we were talking about the business owner has to live in that zone.
In that area too. Okay.
I agree. I think it's both.
Okay.
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
Yeah, we need to make it clear then. Okay.
Okay, and I will just for clarity's sake, so I believe this would include some of the Grayton area that is, the 9544 zip code up in this area up here.
Would
But
include all of
this
it,
is,
or
sorry?
some of it? Would it include all of that zip code or just some of it?
That's a good question. I don't think it will be all of it. I can probably pull up a quick zip code map. Here's Grayton, the town of Grayton. And so the 3-mile radius is basically the intersection, not quite, but about basically the intersection of Grayton Road and 116. So it does not look like a 3-mile radius would include the town of Grayton.
Okay. And does the 3-mile radius include any other zip codes other than the 95472 and the 9444?
Yes.
Yes, because portions of Santa Rosa would have a different zip code, I believe.
Well, in the area like Hall Road and Occidental Road, that's a different zip code as well.
So the motion is 3 miles and in the 95472, right? Is that how? Okay.
I guess I'm actually realizing it would be an or. So to allow still the 95472 zip code, 95444 zip code in its entirety, but with the radius in addition to allow for applicants living east of Sebastopol to be able to apply. So it would make the overall area bigger than currently exists. But if council wants to winnow that down to just the radius, they can.
Okay, and I do have a zip code map just so because it's getting a little complicated. So 95472 is shown in the brown. The 95444 is the green bit right here. And then here's the center of town, and the 3-mile radius would include portions of the 95401 and 95407.
And are those? Do they write? Does their address say Sebastopol, or it just depends? The one say 95407.
That I do not know.
Okay, because I just feel uncomfortable, even though they're in that 3-mile radius. If someone has a different city address and they're participating in Sebastopol, I don't know if that's a little confusing to me.
But I think people that live in 95472 and live in Occidental would use Occidental.
Sure.
They would say Occidental.
Okay, all right.
or Monte Rio, or
Yep.
you know,
Okay.
or Forestville. You know, there's a lot of 95472 residents don't
necessarily have, okay, Sebastian.
have a Sebastopol address either.
So question about to the east of Sebastopol, does that 3-mile radius take in any of the city of Santa Rosa, or is it the county?
Let me see if I can get the city limits map up for a moment.
Seems like what we're doing now is shifting West County, expanding the radius to the east is maybe not what we really intended to do. I still think it should be our zip codes, and not Santa Rosa's zip codes. I doubt that the other to the east of us say Sebastopol on it, because I used to live not too far from the city limits to the east, and I would say Santa Rosa.
Right, and so it does look like if you look at this pink line here, that is the Santa Rosa city limit. It sort of jogs here, but it goes right up Bright Road. So it does look like there's a little bit of that 3-mile radius that would be in Santa Rosa. And I can do just something real quick here.
So maybe we should
To be
consider
able
2.5 miles.
Or we could do this, well, I don't mean to be speaking out of order.
That's okay, we're in discussion.
And so, yes,
Okay.
there are Santa Rosa addresses in there, in this area around Yana Road, sorry.
Well, if we did the 3-mile radius within the zip codes that we want, so except maybe that would clean it up.
I won't accept that as an amendment to my motion.
Okay, so the motion that has been made is the 95444, 95472 zip codes, or a 3-mile radius centered on North Main Street in Bodega.
I'll say if you move the center to Ives Park, you might eliminate the Santa Rosa addresses. I mean, the Santa Rosa, not the Santa Rosa addresses, but the Santa Rosa city limits. If it's going, because that line was going over South Wright Road, which is the Santa Rosa city limits. So if you move the center of the circle a little bit further west, you could not let people who live in Santa Rosa be on our planning commission.
Yeah, we don't want those Santa Rosans.
It's really kind of Parkside School rather than Ives Park. Parkside School.
Maybe it's
I was just
maybe it's
working
like
on that.
Washington and
Yeah, it's kind of
Washington and Bodega or something like that.
Yeah, I just suggested the intersection in part, just because, when we're dividing up the evacuation routes for town, we kind of have the quadrants clearly defined. And when I had measured it, it was exactly 3 miles to city of Santa Rosa, but maybe if anybody wants to make an amendment that, the radius not include any parcels within another municipal jurisdiction or something like that, that could, just disqualify anyone who might be in some of those kind of stray city of Santa Rosa parcels, because the radius will include city of Santa Rosa. I mean, there's wastewater treatment plants along Highway 12 that are city of Santa Rosa, but no one lives in them. So functionally no risk of anyone joining the planning commission from those parcels.
Yeah.
Sounded like that was an amendment.
What's that?
It sounded like you amended your own motion.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. But we need to have it restated, please.
Okay. So I move that this Sebastopol City Council consider for appointment to the planning commission, eligible appointment to the planning commission, all of those who are for those in the out of city limits category, that they reside within the 95472 zip code or the 95444 zip code, or within a 3-mile radius of the point defined at North Main Street and Bodega Avenue, providing that said applicants do not reside within any other municipal jurisdiction, namely the city of Santa Rosa. Is there a second?
You're good at that, Luke. That was very clear.
Yes, I was second.
Okay.
Is
So
there,
any discussion?
yeah, I mean, I guess I'm still not totally in line with the whole 95472 zip code. Am I the only one that's not in favor of that, or are there other concerns?
What do you mean by that? That you'd
I don't think we should include the whole 95472
Okay.
zip code, personally. So if that's the motion, I would vote against it, I guess I'll say.
Okay. So you're thinking more just a 3 mile radius.
I would be more down with just a radius or something, or somehow define it. I mean, if we want to draw our own boundary and say, Grayton Road to Ferguson, whatever, we can draw our own boundary if we want to get that detail with it. It seems like the radius is easier than getting to that kind of fine level of drawing our own boundary. But I guess I just don't think it should be such an expansive area, personally.
Still comments? It seems like what we are trying to do by opening it up to non-residents is partly in recognizing that they use Sebastopol sort of as the hub. But I don't believe that Santa Rosa, or to the east of us, uses us as their hub. They mostly go to Santa Rosa. And I don't necessarily, I want to appreciate the folks that have their kids in our schools, that shop in our stores, that own businesses. But I just, going to the east, I think is, I'm not sure how to solve this now. I like the radius for within the zip codes, 95472 and the other small one. That would be how I would handle it.
So you're the entire 95472, Linda?
No, the 3 mile radius within the 95472.
Okay, yeah, I feel similar to that as well.
I mean,
I do also.
Okay. So
sounds like we have no consensus around this.
no.
That's what I'm hearing.
So either we modify that or we go ahead and take the vote, but it doesn't sound like we have a majority for that. So
I would suggest, because there is a motion that has been seconded, that there needs to be a vote on that.
okay.
And then if that fails, then another motion could be made.
All right.
Or a substitute motion can be made, right?
Well, if we vote on one, then we just make a new motion, right?
Okay. So we're going to then vote on that proposal, which is the entire 95472 or the 3 mile radius and the 94444, right?
Yeah, 94444, 95472, or 3 mile radius centered on North Main Street in Bodega, provided it does not include any another city jurisdiction.
Okay. So,
So
go ahead and call for the vote.
okay, Commissioner Kelly,
No,
Commissioner Haug,
No,
Commissioner Ottinger,
No.
Commissioner Lindenbush,
Yes.
Commissioner Dauch.
Sorry.
Sorry, what was that?
Sorry, that was an aye.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Fitz
No.
and Chair Fernandez.
No.
Okay, so that motion fails.
Okay.
Well, it seems to me we don't really have a consensus for this item at all, because I'm okay with going to the east. I'm not okay with the whole zip code. Zach is okay with the whole zip code and going to the east. Luke is okay with the whole zip code and going to the east. The other 3 of you or 4 of you sound like, well, I guess maybe it's 4 of you. Maybe that would work if you wanted to do just the 3 mile radius in the 95472. If Kathy, Everett, Linda, and Kate all agree to that, that would be a majority. So maybe that's, if you guys all agree with that, maybe that's the motion.
Yes, Kathy?
My feeling is that by pulling in the 95472 zip code, we're pulling it away from communities like Forestville and Occidental, and maybe Grayton's in our community, but it's outside the 3-mile radius. And we're kind of pulling it into the people who think they live in Sebastopol, but they just live outside of the city. And I think the problem is with the 3-mile radius. I think it's just even 2.5, pulling it a little bit more away from Santa Rosa, in case there are people over. I guess at that point there really aren't that many people over there. But if you're traveling, 2.5 miles from the center of town, you probably think you live in Sebastopol, and I think that's a better area to consider. I suppose you could say within the 2.5 mile or even the 3-mile radius, but you're in the 95472 zip code. I think that works for me. But I think that maybe even 3 miles is too far, because you're getting people who know they're not really in the city, in the community. They're much more rural. I think there are so many people just outside the city that they would feel included and be considered in the community. Now, I suppose if you have a business owner and they don't live there, they would want to live all the way out in Occidental. I see Zach agreeing, so maybe that's the reason for it. But
Kate's got a hand up, so I don't want to interject just yet, but I have some thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to concur. I think there's 2 separate issues. One is if we're opening it up to outside of the city limits, but they are business owners, they might very well live beyond the 3-mile radius. So that poses kind of this double jeopardy type of situation where someone has to own a business and then also live within that radius. So I think that's a little bit more complicated in terms of we are trying to broaden the voices that are heard. And then I think the other issue is, how far to the east you want to go. So I think maybe that's why they originally settled on just using the zip code as the determinant for the outside positions, because it leaves a lot of leeway for business owners in terms of where they live in relationship to the actual city of Sebastopol. That's my comment.
That's what I was going to say.
And if I may, I'm trying to look at different ways of parsing geography, and I'll just suggest one which you can completely throw away if you'd like to, but just using our GIS and looking what, schools and where the catchment area for schools are, I thought might be a useful metric, because that's especially to the east. And so the Sebastopol Union, you can see, does go over to the east, Yana Road kind of area where there's, and a little bit of Todd Road. It's a very rural area. There's not a lot of population there, but that is, I don't know if that's, and obviously it would be more than just that as the districts, but if you wanted to do it based on school district identification, there's, the ones surrounding the city, just as a thought. It's not quite a radius, but it's not drawing our own boundaries exactly either.
so you would include Twin Hills and Gravenstein Union as well?
Well, if I were to suggest it, I would probably say Sebastopol Union, Gravenstein, and Twin Hills. I don't know how far that goes down, but Two Rock is certainly Petaluma kind of area. And I don't have kids in school, so I don't understand exactly the identification of these, but I know some of you do. So I don't know, like Oak Grove Union, that gets up to about the area of Grayton, which is approximately that almost a 3-mile radius. There's Occidental. It's just north of Occidental to Greenville. So whether or not to include that or not, I don't. It's certainly up to the commission as to whether you're going to want to think about this kind of a geography or not. But I've sort of included the zoning map of Sebastopol so you can kind of see the scale
I don't know. I feel like we're not, I don't know that there's a lot of consensus on this. So maybe that just gets reported back to the council that they have to figure this out on their own.
Yeah, like that.
I say,
sure, and I can certainly report that there was no clear, you have the majority of outside and your specifications for that you made a motion on and have consensus on, but just in terms of what the geography is, yes, I can certainly describe that in a staff report that there were a number of different ways it could be parsed. There wasn't clear consensus.
Yeah, and I think that's the point. There are a number of ways, and I think the school districts is actually a really interesting way of looking at it. I don't, but I think it needs a little more focused. Just, if I could spend a bit more time on it, I might be able to gain a stronger sense of what, an opinion. And I'm really going on just kind of my feeling about what should or shouldn't be included. So I think it's something that needs a little more study.
Yeah, and you can just discuss some of the issues that we discussed and the city limits and all of that. So yeah, I'd be okay with that. Is everyone else okay with just the?
Well, and I'll just throw this out there. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to, I mean, if anyone else is interested, I mean, maybe we, like I suggest, maybe we actually draw a boundary, maybe using this 3-mile idea, roughly the school district, and we find some roads that we can kind of trace around and say, this is the boundary, I don't know. I mean,
right. And I
don't think we have the time or the ability to kind of do that right now, but
maybe we can just suggest, that is one of their options as to how. I think we've given them enough information, what were concerns, and for them to, that's why they get the big bucks.
And so, well, actually, I will note that given the changes being recommended, so if it was just eliminating the alternate, that's actually something that they, you're talking about codifying the elimination of the alternate, which is a change to the ordinance, and then requiring the majority of residents is a change to the ordinance, and the additional outside, or the specifications about the outside city limit, what that can be, the limitations on that. Those will all take an ordinance change, so that ordinance language will probably come back to you for review and recommendation to council. And so what I can do, and of course we'll have a planning commission liaison as well, when this is presented to council, is present that there is some interest in modifying the boundaries. There's a number of different ways, and there wasn't clear consensus. If we get directions from city council and they say, yeah, we think we want a 3-mile radius, well then it's, it's easy. If they say, yeah, we actually would like the commission to look at drawing our own boundary that does make sense, then that's something that we can come back to you at the same time or before, while we're working up the language for the ordinance. And so that's, it doesn't need to be done all in one night tonight, I guess is what I'm trying to assure you, that if council has direction, they can, provide direction based on your comments tonight, and it can come back to this group.
Okay. All right. And was that all the items, I think?
That was, thank you. That was a very complex, and you handled it well, Chair Fernandez. Thank you for your facilitation of that.
All right. So we can move on to subcommittee updates, unless anybody else has any other comments on that. Thank you for your patience with all of that, and some good deliberation. Okay.
And so I think for the subcommittee updates, I don't know, Commissioner Lindenbush, if there's a climate subcommittee update you want to share?
Yeah, I'll keep it really brief, but the Climate Action Committee is well underway. There had been some concern from, committee members around the region, and just kind of told me, get into working groups as quickly as you can. We spent a really long time not getting into working groups, and we're doing our working group assignments tomorrow. So we're really ahead of the curve from other cities, from everything I've heard, in terms of just getting everyone into the area that they're passionate about, making sure that there's enough direction on a committee level to make it work, but then just letting them run with it, and really make sure that it's a process that has a lot of community engagement. With that, I'll just note that tomorrow we're having another of many conversations to continue, I'm sure, about the revision to the climate action City of Sebastopol. And so that'll be taking up most of our conversation tomorrow in our meeting at 3:30. So that's pretty much it for me. Again, if anyone has any questions about Climate Action Committee or wants to attend our meetings, feel welcome to. Otherwise, I'm happy to talk about it. I've also been in kind of the steering committee, the co-chair group, as you know, there were two people who were really excited about facilitating and being on board and had not been on a public committee before. So it's been good to kind of, you know, get all of our different skill sets together and really, you know, make it happen. So there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of enthusiasm, there's a lot of expertise, and I think this is really going to be a generative effort for the city.
And the details of the meeting are on the Sebastopol calendar, right? Site. Okay.
Yes, we are a Brown Act board, so all of our meetings are noticed.
Okay.
Much to the chagrin of a couple folks. Wish they could just keep on moving.
Okay.
Okay, and then the other subcommittee update is we did not appoint a representative for the zero waste at our last meeting since we were missing a few folks. And I apologize, I realized that I meant to send out the information to those who were missing, but I did not, so I'm just going to go over it really quickly. We did have Sunny Galbraith here, who's the chair of that committee. The meeting time for that group is the first Monday of the month from 3:30 to 5. You know, a lot of what they've been working on is restaurant waste, water conservation, food recovery. They put together the polystyrene ordinance and the zero waste guidelines for events in cities like the Music Man concerts and anything that utilizes city parks. Obviously that is on hold for now, but policy is already in place. And they are likely to pick up how to deal with a lot of the COVID PPE, the protective equipment, and you know, the things that COVID has necessitated as they start their meetings again. And so I believe Commissioner Ottinger had expressed a willingness to be on the committee, but we didn't know if there were others who would also be potentially interested as well. And so the direction was to bring it back at this meeting.
I have a conflict with their meeting time, not now, but if the world ever gets back to where it is, I already had things that are conflicting at that time, so I don't want to add another one.
Okay.
Don't see anybody else, I guess, jumping in. But there's a specific position for a planning commissioner, right?
Yes, the council has requested that a commissioner be a liaison to that group.
Okay.
I could do it temporarily. Who knows when life will get back to you know, it could be a while if, you know, unless someone else wants to do it. But I'm willing to do it for now, if everyone. No one
Yeah, and then if it changes for you, then at least you'll have a better understanding what it's about and can report back, and maybe by that time someone would have an interest to continue. So that's okay. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I ask a question about subcommittees.
Yeah.
So I was on the housing subcommittee, the council housing subcommittee. Do they ever do anything? Because I never know. I've never heard of, but maybe they're just excluding me. I don't know. I'm just curious.
So I did, thank you. I did look into that, and I believe we had one one meeting, and it was about the Sebastopol Inn and getting ready for some of the meetings with the county on that. I did talk with our city clerk, and it turns out that the commission appointed Vice Chair Fritz as the liaison, but it's not an official subcommittee position. So I'm going to raise that with the housing subcommittee at the next meeting that I have with them. It was actually on my agenda when we met about getting ready for Sebastopol Inn work, but we ran out of time and did not get to that. So that is currently does not have a planning commission assigned to it. It's just the 2 council members. But I do have that on my pending list to discuss with them the next time we meet.
Okay, and then I believe I was appointed to the design review.
The design guideline subcommittee, yes, and thank you.
What is the status of that? Is that
so that is one of those projects that unfortunately got a little bit waylaid with COVID due to staffing resources. However, we are looking to pick that up this spring and get that going. And so you'll probably hear from me in the next month or so about a meeting for that group.
Okay, thanks.
And just on that note, I do have the liaison list for 2021 filled out at this point. I had to go in and remove the commissioner who, the ghost commissioner that we never saw. So I will send that out tomorrow so that you can see that. I believe we had scheduled through March, but that this schedules it through the rest of the year and into next March.
So who would be for the upcoming council meeting next week?
Right, and that's actually why and I realized I'm sort of jumping ahead. I don't think there's any other subcommittee reports, so I can talk about that in my director's report if you want.
Okay, I think that unless the park, which I think park subcommittee, I think had a report last meeting, but if Kate, Kathy, if you guys want to make any comments on that, or we can make it at the next meeting, it's up to you guys.
Next meeting.
All I can say is that they're moving forward very well and doing a lot of good stuff. So
I think we'll have more to report the next meeting.
yeah, okay. Okay, let's move on to planning director's report.
Okay, I do have a few upcoming items, but I will start out with the last city council meeting. The last city council meeting, we had mid-year budget review, which there's nothing big for this group to report. They did ask that we do our general fund housing element budget item just as part of the regular budget, but they directed us that we were fine to go out for the RFP and get that get a consultant on board in the meantime, since most of the work would be happening in the next cycle or the next after the next fiscal year starts anyway. And then I did give a presentation on the RHNA, the Regional Housing Need Assessment numbers, to them. The bulk of it was the same as the presentation the Planning Commission had received in December. The one update I have, and you may have read about it in the local papers since they picked it up as well, is that the ABAG MTC Executive Board did meet in January to approve the final methodology. And in between when I spoke with you last, I believe the Sebastopol RHNA allocation draft number was about 410. In the meantime, the Plan Bay area draft has been finalized, and they picked up a number of the edits that we had done at staff level and sent to them, for all of the communities and most of the communities in Sonoma County. And they also had to make some adjustments based on the greenhouse gas targets for it, which resulted in the numbers for the rural areas and the rural counties going down pretty significantly. So Sebastopol's RHNA number has gone from 410 to 213 units. And the county's number, the unincorporated jurisdiction went down by about 1,300 units. And the county overall, with all the jurisdictions together, went down about 3,000 units. And the comparison is the overall county was assigned about 900% more than the last cycle. So it, whereas the overall ABAG number went up, I forget the number, but it was more like 200%. So, you know, significantly pushing a lot of growth on the rural counties. Solano County and Napa County, I believe, saw sort of similar drops, especially in the unincorporated areas and the more rural areas. And so, you know, that's sort of really just, I think, rebalancing to, I know personally, I felt like they weren't connecting quality transit with jobs, housing, as well as they might have been. And it sounds like that that transit factor played into it more. A lot of the growth, a lot of those numbers that dropped out of the rural counties were recentered into the San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose areas, where they do have much more robust transit, obviously. And so that was the update. I believe I sent out the staff report to you all. So if you have any questions, we can get to that in a moment. But I do want to review a couple of upcoming council meeting and other items. We do have a couple of big commission items coming up in at City Council on March 2nd. The Benedetti Car Wash, the continuation of that item will be heard. And they had asked staff to draft findings and recommendations of approval and to craft some additional conditions related to a lot of the items that the commission had identified, which the council agreed in terms of the water vapor and the noise concerns and those types of things. And so those that will be on March 2nd, next Tuesday. There will also be a presentation on Climate Safe California. And then on March 16th, they will be having the development impact fee public hearing to start the adoption process for the development impact fees that this group had reviewed, and that will likely be the meeting where the Planning Commission composition, your recommendations for tonight, will move forward to council as well. And so we do need a liaison for both of those. The March liaison is Linda Kelly with Commissioner Haug as the alternate for that if she's not available. However, I don't know with the Benedetti Car Wash if I believe Chair Fernandez was the original alternate, was the original Planning Commission liaison for that, and so we can discuss who the appropriate liaison for that is in a moment. A couple other notes: there is a special City Council meeting to have a study session on March 10th, 8:30 to 10 or 10:30. To review and discuss the commission work that's been going on, the community vitality consultant. And then I did want to note that if you have not seen, that we have a new police chief who's been hired, Kevin Kilgore. He is most recently a lieutenant for UCLA Police Department, and he will start next Monday.
And they're going to introduce him at the next council meeting, though, right?
Yes, they will introduce him at the March 2nd council meeting. Yep.
Okay.
And I think that's it for my report. If anyone has any questions or want to discuss logistics about the Planning Commission liaison.
Can I make a comment?
Please do.
Unfortunately, my work schedule doesn't let me attend the council meeting on Tuesdays. So I'm hoping my alternate, Ms. Haug, would be able to stand in, or if there was anybody, how else you want to handle that, Chair?
Right, and so there are two meetings, like as noted, the March 2nd is the continued Benedetti Car Wash item, and then the March 16th is the impact fees hearing.
I mean, I can attend the March 2nd since I did the first one, if that helps. And then I don't know, Kate, are you available for either of those? days?
I can be available for both or either. If you, for consistency's sake, if you want to attend the March 2nd one as you were there previously, I don't know if that's helpful or not, but I'm available.
I think in this case, because they did have pretty lengthy discussions, it may be helpful to have continuity with Everett, who is the liaison at the first part of that hearing.
Okay, and then yeah, and of course, any commissioners are welcome to attend the meeting and make comments as well. So why don't we do that? I'll be the liaison for the 2nd, and then Kate, you can have on the 16th officially.
And the 16th will be, like I said, the development impact fee hearing and presentation and hearing, as well as the planning commission composition from tonight.
Okay. All right.
All
And
right, thank you.
did you want to mention any of the upcoming presenters or presentations at this point, or we can wait till next?
Let's see. I don't have a full list in front of me, but I will note we do have, just for upcoming planning commission meetings, our next meeting will have one public hearing, an amendment to a use permit, as well as a presentation from Mid-Peninsula Housing about, sorry, it's not Mid-Peninsula Housing, it's about co-housing, which includes one of the folks involved with 2 Acre Woods, and former planning commissioner Michael Jacob. And so that'll be the next meeting. And then we do have some additional presentations on various housing folks in the next couple of months. And it might be easier to just actually send that out to the group via email if folks are interested in knowing what's coming up.
Yeah.
I do anticipate there will also be other items on those agendas as well, but at least you can see what the presentations will be.
Okay, and thank you to Kate, Commissioner, for setting those up for us. Appreciate it. Okay, any questions for Planning Director? Okay, well, good job today, everyone. And if there's nothing else, we can adjourn till our next meeting, which will be, when is the next meeting?
March 23rd.
23rd.
Yes, and we will have, yes, we will have an item on, sorry, not March.
March 9th? No, this says March 9th on the agenda.
March 9th, thank you. March 9th, yes.
Got it. Okay. All right, well then I'll officially adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone, for your participation.
All right, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Carrie.
Thanks, everybody. All right, so Naomi, I'm ready to sign off unless you need me to, I can just leave the meeting, I guess. You'll end it whenever you're done with your stuff, Naomi.
Sam, can you stop the live stream, please?
Yeah, sorry.